What if burnout wasn't a problem to fix, but a signal guiding you toward deeper alignment with life? The Practice Podcast invites you to explore how aligning with your energy can transform your connection to yourself, your relationships, and your work. Through real stories, data-driven insights, and life-centered tools, each episode helps you tune into your body's signals and create life-affirming change from the inside out. Welcome to the Practice Podcast. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Practice Podcast, Founder to Founder edition. It has been at least 6 months since the last time that Kristi and I came together to really talk about all things energetic literacy, regenerative business, our growing edges and such. And there is a lot to catch you guys up on. And even sitting with the kind of time span between last time and this time, we really had to think about, okay, what is the story that we want to tell? And I think Kristi and I came upon the theme that starting last year, we ventured into a whole heap of unknown. After many years serving what we would call the enterprise market and being an enterprise solution, we had to come to the acceptance that it wasn't wanting to happen in the ways in which we had aspired or intended, that something else was trying to break through. And that something else was to serve leaders directly. We were creating a lot of fans inside of these organizational engagements that we had been rolling out. And yet the readiness and the willingness to expand SORCE technology through the culture was not happening at the rate that would support the business. And yet there was proof points of a different market that wanted to come through. And so with that, we dove into the unknown. And that unknown was developing a brand new vertical and a brand new market. And so today we are going to be talking about that experience, what it means as a company and as a regenerative business to embrace the unknown, to dive into it, to submit yourself to various questions, how energetic literacy plays a role in that process, and then what came out, what knowns actually surfaced through our last year. And then we'll finally end probably back in some unknowns, some areas of the business in which we are once again submitting ourselves to discovery. So that is going to be the story arc today. And of course, we will pepper it in with our personal anecdotal stories and, of course, data. How have our nervous systems responded to an endeavor such as this? So, Kristi, I'm laying the groundwork. Is there anything that you want to add to the arc of today?
Yeah, I think that it's important to even realize during our story that we still very much serve the enterprise market. It's there. It's not like we turned off that part of the company. It's just that our energy and the entry points into that market are very different. And so it isn't a turn off, turn on rather than a turn on, and in support of where kind of the market is telling us and how our company expresses and where our teams spend energy, where Jessica and I spend energy, our partners, our engineers, the whole squad at SORCE. We're just kind of weaving around it in a different way. But yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, because a big part of what we teach through energetic literacy, and anybody that's brand new to energetic literacy, it's the ability to understand, manage, and renew yourself, your teams, your families, your organizations, using your whole brain, your logic, and your energetic wisdom. We always ground this in data through heart rate variability, but we also look at this opportunity through a subjective lens where we really sense in. We use what our advisor, Karen Ravore, just explained to us is we also use the warm data of our somatics and our visceral experience to really breathe in what is the right next strategic step How do you grow in a way that's life affirming? These are questions that, not a lot of people have answers to. In fact, the only way to really get to your answers is to live the question. Hence our last year in the unknown. So, Kristi, why don't you break down some of the unknowns that we were living into as an organization?
I think that for us, there are always many
Yeah.
unknowns. We have a lot of them all the time. A source very much builds the plane on the way down, swaps the engine in flight. We take the next step before we're ready. We learn. And one thing that as it relates to kind of our pivot and this area that we're focusing in our direct to leader market, serving leaders who are really ready. Something that has been very apparent is the who, the what type of leader we're attracting into this space, what type of leader we're magnetizing towards source, what type of leader organically finds themselves here, which we are seeing a lot more of lately. I think the last time we spoke, we were talking about how source is growing. It is very much growing. When we allowed the the market to tell us versus kind of assuming the readiness on either side. So we're very much still in curiosity around this, but a big unknown was the who. Who is ready to do this work? Who has the ears to hear it? Who has the heart and the courage to step into a new path of how we do business? Who else has looked at kind of the traditional corporate structures in the face and go, I don't want to build like that. I don't want to lead like that. That isn't working for me. I want to take my team, me, myself, my family, my community in a new direction that is not at the expense of our health. We can build with precision and performance kind of at the top of our game in service to the aliveness, in service to life, in service to our vitality. And which type of leader would find that interesting and want to kind of leave their legacy on that rather than us trying to convince a certain type of person that this is the way. Rather, we're in a bit of an unknown about who are we alone in this pursuit? Who else
We
out
got
there, you know?
we got so accustomed to clocking countless hours educating and what started to feel like convincing people that the system was broken and that we had the solution to fix it. That was a sobering uh, time to go, okay, this is just burning fuel. Like,
Yeah.
w- we no longer want to be in conversation with people that want to be or need to be convinced that a shift is afoot, and that they want to be a part of that next wave of the future of work and frankly a regenerative future for all. And so I think we started to really understand last year, submit ourselves to going into the unknown around the who, and releasing the repetitive
Kind of,
pattern of
yeah.
trying to convince.
And especially because it's very hard for me personally to release this pattern because we could see into these organizations, these law firms, these hospital settings, this healthcare, these, big consulting firms that really needed our help. We would speak to their employees, we would kind of go in there and audit, we would learn. And it is very clear that the culture is in need for more of a tectonic shift than just a wellness pass or a gym pass or a seminar. And yet, the key decision makers almost across the board felt safer doing that, the gym pass and moving on. And there wasn't anything that we were going to be able to do, improve as source to convince them otherwise. And to your point, because we are a company dedicated to energetic literacy, that was burning fuel left and right. And we would spend countless hours going through our product suite and how we launch and how we nurture and send the proposal and get the proposal. We would end up in no man's land. Sure, a little bit of coin to keep the lights on, yes, but um, it also wasn't very reflective of the services that we have to offer because the full breadth of source really couldn't flourish inside of a system that didn't want it there. And that was a big shift. It didn't want it there. So for us to kind of go in there and wiggle around, um, felt a bit odd. What happened from that, as you can see, is that this brand new market opened up, because when we were wiggling around in there, people went, "Hi, I'm here. I'm ready. I want to do this," regardless of what, the employer said. But to that unknown piece, we had to move out of this convincing phase into a let's open ourselves up, speak the truth of who we are, allow our services to land in the way that we know they can, and see who surfaces from there rather than going to chase.
Yeah, it's like code switching. I think we really have over this last year. This is a little bit more the knowns, but we don't code switch as much.
Yeah.
It's just really the authentic expression is the authentic expression in this
Yeah.
environment, in this environment, and in this environment, which leads us to our second unknown that we had to live through. Because when we talk about our authentic expression, what you all need to understand is that, SORCE very much is it's a co-creative process. And much of that co-creation has happened between Kristi and I. And Kristi, and it has a certain psychometric profile, and I have a certain psychometric profile. What that means is what makes sense to her and her being sometimes it needs to be language different than how it really sits within my being. So we need to kind of look at how we're creating. So I know this is a little wonky, but Kristi on a psychometric spectrum is our prefrontal cortex. So she is the one that is looking at things a bit more, let's say, objectively, and with a bit more of a linear lens. And what grounds her is real practical solutions. For me, on the psychometric archetypes, I'm something called the insula. It's a part of the brain that holds vision and has a different way of languaging things like energy and somatics and intuition. And how SORCE, I think, has been articulated has been a balance between the two, somewhere in between that more linear, rational aspect and the creative, intuitive aspect. And so one of the unknowns we've been living into is like, how do we language this conversation that Kristi and I have been having for a long time? And how can we language it for the right target so that, it is both feeling structured and practical, but is taking you into the inner dimensions where the true work really needs to happen. It needs to feel tangible, but it also needs to feel elevated and expansive for one's being. So this has been an unknown, to language the products and services in a way that is authentic to who Kristi and I are and who SORCE is, almost like as a separate third entity. Kristi, how would you talk about that unknown in your words?
I think it's so important to realize, because you guys have to understand that at SORCE is its own thing. It has its own marketing language. It has its own pages. It has landing pages and emails and communication. And my team is in the words a lot. We are sending communications. We're setting up launches and product launches. And Jessica and kind of the visionary squad over with our advisors and our partners, Lisa May, are doing the high level work of no, this is what's got to happen in order for this shift to take place on a soul level, on a spiritual level, on a planet level, on all of these things. But how can we ensure that stays firmly intact as our North Star, but pull it through and ground it enough so that people can play with these frameworks, learn, unlearn, talk to them, feel them, see them, and feel successful kind of in their pursuit, so they are not shut down or overwhelmed by the enormity of the change that likely needs to take place for us to have a fully realized new regenerative way of doing business and life. Jess and I are going to die on this hill. We've said it 1,000 times, but it's important for people, especially as we are navigating a very real global, you know, um, emotional footprint everywhere, that we can help people feel secure in this pursuit. So it's always this dance between, is this going to sound too spiritual or soul? But for Jessica, the whole thing is spiritual, and how she relates to it is said, and probably for some of you, and for others, it's called the inner work, or how we, tease out what's going on inside of our bodies. And I think that one thing we've come upon is when people are really committed to performance metrics, productivity, these outputs, we're on calls all the time. Well, how do you measure performance and productivity and all of these things that we need to measure in order to get these things off the ground? And we start talking about doing the inner work and looking at your energetic capacity every day in support of that. It's not something that's kind of tangible, proving out metric that we can hand you. But we all know, we can all sit here and feel that if you are unwell inside of your body, the things that you produce aren't going to be that great. And so, that if we take a full step back into our common sense, that is kind of what we're saying here. But the unknown has been how to language that in a way where the enormity of the experience doesn't get collapsed or watered down.
I know. It's like the big unknown has been the languaging of
Yeah.
this journey. And we need to language it for the who, which was the other unknown. Do you see how
Yeah. I'm
we were
seeing it now
in
even in real
the
time.
abyss that we were in? It's
Yeah.
like, you guys, when you are creating, it's like you got to submit yourselves to walking around in the dark and bumping around and learning the terrain until it's charted. And it can feel like you're losing a lot of the time, but really with every little, uh, kind of landmark that you bump into, that you track, you're actually learning and you're growing and you're getting closer. So we all just got to take our bumps, man, in the dark, when
Yeah.
in discovery, which is what we have been. So unknown, who? Unknown, how to language it, because this is, again, for me, like Kristi said, this is an inner work process that then we want to translate into our outer framework, so that there is more of a likelihood that life can be more beautiful in every dimension. Businesses can succeed, people can be healthy. The entity of the business itself is infusing the entire stakeholder chain with vitality. And this transcends profit by a long shot, So these are big, big questions that we're living. The last question is a little bit more tactical and grounded. The last unknown that we really had to live this year was the financial modeling. So why don't you
Mhm.
go ahead and start that one?
Oh
Because it's like
my.
we had to go into the who, and then we had to go into how do you language this process? And now how do you model it in a way that's regenerative?
Yeah. And this is really important because I remember early on we would sit in these Silicon Valley pitch meetings, and they're wanting to see our 10-year trajectory and our forecasts that nobody ever makes good on. And they're spending 1,000 hours on these reports that no one ever reads. And we're proving things that no one ever has intention to prove. And this big show of smoke and mirrors, most of it. And I think the challenge for SORCE, something that we didn't even talk about previously, Jess, is that we sit on a bit of a spectrum inside of our company between this pursuit feeling difficult to charge for in
Mm.
general, because this there's a bit of activism in what we do, and there's a bit of kind of a calling, a higher calling. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't,
Mhm.
because we had spent the first, some odd years forfeiting any sort of salary that we would ever make. And this is the pursuit in itself shouldn't sometimes feel like we need to charge
It's like,
anything
would you
for this.
charge to go to church? Would you
I
charge to go to
know.
church? No. And this, a lot of times, it feels like a liberation. It
It's
feels like,
sticky.
yeah,
Yeah,
not
to
just
have
sticky. It feels like it is of highest
yeah.
value in the sense of we are here to help people reconnect with life in the
Yeah.
same way that many times church does for people. So it has felt a little confusing at times.
It has. I think as a global view, why I said it feels sticky is because every time we go into financial modeling, it puts us in a bit of a mood because the mood around the financial modeling, it sometimes goes into that mechanistic era because the truth is we're not running a nonprofit. That is
Yep.
not what we're running. We are a business that aims and is financially healthy, that is going to provide value for everybody in this company, that isn't committed to greed, that we are holding ourselves accountable not to go over the falls. How can we do this in a way that feels really good for all involved? And as we scale, how do we keep that intact? So I think globally, the finances are always a bit like, oh, do we have to go in this? Because we just want to be spreading the good work. We want everybody who wants to experience at Source to be able to come. But in the reality, we have to look at our cogs. We have to look at time and output that is spent in order to make good on energetic literacy too, as an entity. In the way in which we build is we cannot overtax our systems in place, even in an effort to help. And I think that's been kind of globally a financial edge for us, is that we just want to kind of help everyone. So we've had to create some boundaries around that need to just support and overserve in effort for everyone to be able to have access to the community that we've created and the services.
It's the underbelly of the helper, which is
Yeah.
I want to serve, I want to help. And when the helper gets unhealthy is when we go into martyring. And
Mhm.
what we have to watch as a business is going into any form of martyring, because then we're not doing regenerative. Then it isn't life affirming on this
Yeah.
side of the coin. So how we had to go into that unknown, that process of, yeah, really understanding time, investment, and the returns that need to come in order for the relationship to be reciprocal. And I would just say to any nonprofit or any service-oriented business that does sometimes go into being an unhealthy helper, you got to get back to the
Mhm.
actual costs and start to pencil it. So we had to go into that unknown, which took us a fair amount of time and really, I think, put us at our emotional edge often.
Yeah.
So those were some of the unknowns that we had to live into and submit ourselves to. But of course, again, you bump around in the dark long enough, you're going to be able to start to chart a path beyond the box. And we were. So the first known was that we did learn about our target. We did learn about this leader. And so, Kristi, why don't you go ahead and share what it is that we learned about the leader?
Sure, because this has been fascinating to surround ourselves with the type of leaders that I no longer personally feel um, any discord with. There's this energy that when I am on the line with them and our team is talking to them, there's an energy that is here that feels very in alignment with who we are and what we're building. I can feel my body relax around this type of human, and this type of leader does not need any convincing. They may not have all the tools, they may not have all the language. We certainly and we don't. We're building them together. But they feel that there is a more abundant, kind of alive way to build. They no longer want to sit in meetings and quiet themselves and cut themselves off at the throat. They no longer want to subscribe to the fact that they have to leave their Slack on 24 hours a day or they'll get fired. They are very high achieving individuals at the top of their game, high performers, people that like to dig in on the data. A lot of them wear HRV tools or wear Aura rings. They're into optimization, but they also are not happy with doing that at all costs. They really want to feel into different parts of themselves. They want to lead in a way that is modeling healthy behavior inside of their teams. And they want to steward something new. They are in this season of transition. We oftentimes see leaders in transition from one job to the next because they don't want to take this, quote unquote, toxic way of working with them. They are excited to build in a way that both supports life and business goals. Because I tell you what, we talk a lot about SORCE, about life affirming and feeling alive and feeling healthy and feeling well and the inner work journey in order for the external results. But the truth is that when you are looking at energetic literacy and you're peeling back the layers, you will start to realize that it informs all of these kind of more traditional metrics in a very big way. And so that who really likes that combination. They want to do good work, but they're no longer going to tolerate all of the kind of negative self-talk, negativity, and degradation of their system. They know a change is there. They kind of see something in source and want to dip their toe in. And furthermore, they want to be an influencer in their own communities, that change agent that says, "Hey, I'm gonna talk about this in my office." I remember one of our members, Christine, said something very powerful that she gives permission to share, that by engaging in this work, she was able to bring to the C-suite kind of meetings this language around energy. I have a recover day, I have a push day, I have a maintain day, and it started to neutralize this thing she's been wanting to say, but she had been quieting herself for far too long. And so this type of leader is courageous enough to take those steps, because the thing is it's okay to practice in the confines of your own home, but it's another thing to come out then and start to behave a different way and start to model a different way inside. And the who is sort of ready to do that.
Yeah. The readiness is a big, big component. People that are like, I've been experiencing a shift inside of myself for a long time. I haven't had the words until,
Mm-hmm.
I have come upon your work and it's giving me all the words and all the validation of what I've been actually feeling. And so it's what they're really responding to is having their own inner knowing validated through language and tools and community, so that it's like, oh yeah, we can do this. I don't have to be a lone wolf just in my own experience anymore. There's a growing group of people that subscribe to what's emerging through me as well, and that just feels like relief in a time that there is just like riddled with pressure. Finding energetic literacy for the right person, it really just, it just like, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Beautifully said. I think that time and time again, our leaders come out of one of our 30-day experiences or even inside of the membership saying, I felt this all along, and this
Right.
just kind of gave me the words, which is so nice because at Source, we love to kind of set up the framework, but we're very much in a co-creation with all of our leaders. And so everyone has their own wisdom to bring to the table. And it's really not as if we're teaching them something brand new. It's almost pulling out their already felt sense, which can feel really empowering, especially for someone like me. I mean, if you're anything like me, I did not go to an Ivy League school. I don't have a ton of language. I'm very built on street smart and grit, and sometimes finding these words to something that I have felt for a number of years just really feels that you're in a community that understands you. And we're also talking about leaders from, you know, giant organizations all the way down to small. We're not a status driven company. And so it isn't, I mean, there are people inside of our doing big work around the world, working for global organizations. So the readiness isn't just relegated to status either. It can be, you know, wherever you are in your leadership journey.
100%. So that was one of the knowns that we did come into, from not knowing who to having a better idea who. And we keep learning about the person that is ready. There's, a lot of, a lot more to understand about what we would call this archetype. But we have a much more developed idea now of who we are talking to, and that's been gratifying. The other part now, in terms of the unknown around how to language things, I think we now know much better. Again, not fully realized, because it's ever evolving, but we have a much better sense of how to language it and how to language what we do. There is, I would say, a healthy portion, let's call it 70% of tactical, practical, with 30% energetic, intuitive. This balance feels grounded and expansive. And so it has been, though, Kristi and I have clocked hundreds, thousands of hours talking about language, and how to language the unseen. Because that's a lot of what we're doing here. We're trying to language energy. It's the unseen. But we're getting it done, guys. We're getting it done. So if you fancy yourself, as somebody that really wants to be in this world, not some transcendent, starseed, which no offense to the starseeds out there, but you want to use your energetic, intuitive, somatic senses in real world scenarios. Energetic literacy is just made for you. Made for you to unlock and unblock yourself. So I think we moved from unknown to known in that way too, Kristi.
Yeah, I totally agree. And how that has informed freedom inside of the way in which we speak, which we go to events, how we are presented. We're partnering with Canyon Ranch soon. We are partnering with the Institute of Real Growth. How our team is out in the world allows us a lot more freedom to be who we are and not sort of contort to some vision that, that Silicon Valley holds or any other, company needs to subscribe to. And for us to know that that isn't going to be our downfall. And that, I always joke with our community that we're full of a bunch of black sheeps, but they laugh and then they fully subscribe because we are. And soon it won't feel so black sheep when we can start to, gain some momentum around this work, which we already are. And it's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that final kind of unknown to known on the financial piece, having to really look and clock all the time that we have dumped into each experience that we put on. We now have a really good sense of cost. And in service to the health of the business and these ideas and basically the achievement of the overall mission, we feel really confident in standing in our financial health and boundaries, because the boundaries have to exist in order for us to be able to really become a fully regenerative business. So what would you say about that cog mapping process, Kristi?
I know. I was just reflecting back when we did this work in December too. And I think, especially as the operator of the company in operations, I mean, we're both operators, but me looking at kind of finances from a bit more of a black and white perspective, it has been a journey to see this evolution, because a lot of times when you're looking at a product or service, you're looking at how to create the most efficient type of thing so that your margins stay X and that your customers get X value. It's basic business principles. But when we looked at our services, we sort of flipped it on its head a bit. Instead of modeling out something that was so efficient, using every AI tool and chatbot that we can to create that human connection. We instead listened very deeply to our community about what it is that they wanted instead of trying to create an efficient product that we know we could sell. Because that's something that has been historically very easy for SORCE in the past, is people coming into our community kind of liking there and selling products and services is fine. But for us to take a really deep listen into our community of whom we are obsessed with and listen to them in ways that even felt uncomfortable, to bring them into the mess of creating and how to price things and how to model things, co-creating with our community has been key. And that is something that, kudos to Jessica, to put out uncomfortable surveys and conversations. And you go, you know what? That didn't work. So we're not going to do that again. Thank you for your feedback. Instead of kind of positioning us as a shiny new thing each time, we are bringing our customers along for the ride. And how that relates to the modeling so closely is that there are certain things that AI won't be able to do in our company. And that's because it would sacrifice the service too much. There will be certain cogs that we can't optimize any further, or it's going to degrade the service. And so for us, instead of how to cheapen it or make it less than, we instead built our financial modeling based on the need and went, you know what? This is what they want. They want a more hands-on experience. They want to have a human being respond to them. They want to have more time on the calls for sharing and connecting with community. They want to meet up in real life. They want to dive into this a bit deeper. They want all of these things. And so instead of giving it to them in a cheap way, we price them appropriately and give people the ability to rise to that commitment. And I think that is a big change. With that, though, comes, a higher price point when you have a more premium ingredient in anything. When you have human touch points, we all know it's hard to scale those in a way that is super cost effective sometimes. And so we have opened up scholarship funds. We find ways at SORCE, we get creative. But the financial modeling has been following the need and the aliveness and the wants of our community and matching that pricing and that cadence. And so far, it's been awesome to witness that being validated in a lot of ways.
And I will also say one additional component, just as founders, as people that have, potentially walked the path a little earlier than the ones in which we are now bringing in, we also have to have and be willing to have a tremendous amount of integrity with the work itself. And when we talk about at SORCE, solving the human energy crisis, what this is going to require, again, is systemic transformation. And it starts within your own bodies. Of course, we might be able to sell more if we told everyone that you could have a full transformation, within a week. Or you do this one thing and, you will have a conversion experience and never be the same. When we talk about having integrity with the work, it means that we've lived it long enough to know how to systemically change one in an embodied sense. And that takes time. And that time also has a financial equivalent. And we want everybody to be invested in their own transformation in a way that they can't walk away from totally, So it is also when we're looking at not just the cogs, but like the product. And then again, back to the mission. What is this going to take? What this is going to take are leaders, again, that self-identify as being change agents, that are willing to put in the work to rewire their nervous systems, rewire their consciousness in a way that it's their very existence, any room that they're in, becomes a more vital, life-affirmed space. That's what we're talking about in energetic literacy. It doesn't happen overnight. We provide 1,000 3-foot tosses. We're going to step by step take you there. And we promise to only go as fast as your system can soften under. But it does take dedication and commitment. And so financially, back to the financial conversation, we had to price it so that we had enough time with you, time with the people that were gravitating to the work to really deliver on the brand promise.
100%. And I think it would have been so easy for us as a HRV tool and $40 a month and look at your energy and each day. And then you're in a year, you're good. But I had a private practice with nutrition prior to this, and I could hand out a meal plan and they would end up back in my office 30 days later, feeling pretty good. They're doing their, but then we unearth something else. And then we're on this journey of true health, which is really about doing the boring stuff kind of a lot. And so I used to tell my clients, sleeping, moving, getting in the sun, having a connection with yourself and eating whole real food. This is the hardest part. Needs to be on repeat for years. This foundational stuff, repeat for years. This is boring stuff. This is stuff that's foundational to your health. And of course, we can do like a 30-day jump start or whatever that is, but there's nothing that compares to practicing these kind of foundational moments over and over and over. And sometimes it's not very sexy. It really just isn't this magic pill in a bottle or this fairy dust that kind of gets thrown over you, which to me, full circle back to kind of corporate America and the B2B market, they really at the top want it to feel like that. They want to just wave a wand over everybody and say, and now unlimited paid time off and burnout's cured. It's like, no, it's not even wearing an HRV device is that, going to be the end all be all. It's a conversation starter. And so what I invite you into as a leader is that if you are wearing a device or a thing or doing something, to go inward just a little bit in with yourself and start to apply and embody what it is that you're learning that from. Because otherwise, data is just going to sit there and fall completely flat. And that's why we get in these cycles of feeling really unsuccessful, is because we're not going to the root of these things. And in SORCE, we do. And that is kind of, if you are in our community, what people have been loving about these unlearning arcs that we are doing month over month. Because as Jessica said, we got to thaw out from these principles and conditions that have been placed upon our lives and how we should live, lead, and work according to X, Y, and Z, and grind and shut down and become very rigid and analytical. Instead, how can we melt away some of that ice bit by bit? And that's where people are finding relief in the rhythm. And that's to a business where we're finding product market fit, which is just a delight.
Mm-hmm. So we went from unknown to known, and now we're going to go into a whole nother set of unknowns. So let's round out, this episode, which feels more like a recap, a state of the union, if you will. We're
reset space and time.
We're heading into some additional unknowns. So the first unknown that I can see is that we are going to be launching a certification. We've had a series of people that have gone through the curriculum that say that they want to be able to facilitate energetic literacy with their teams, clients. And so we're going to launch that. And it's a big unknown, because it's one thing for this to have emerged as, frankly, a personal experience that then Kristi and I grew in relationship with, and then teach somebody what was happening pretty, I would say, intuitively. Have you ever tried to teach somebody how you do something that you don't have to think about that hard? That's what we have done with the certification. So we are about to go into a big unknown of, again, the market. Is there a market for it? We think so. Uh, we wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And how does that curriculum roll out? How is it going to be received? What tweaks and refinements are we going to have to make in order for it to, really sit comfortably within the ecosystem that we've created? That's one unknown. Kristi, any additions to that one?
I think that's a pretty big one because, a lot of how we grow at Source is organic throughout every channel. We do not have a giant sales and marketing team. Sales is something we kind of even struggle with. So the unknown, you know, being the certification at the top is how do we grow this company with the people ready to grow with us, sit on our bench? Do they want to facilitate this work inside of organizations? Do they want to take this to their team? Do they want to get certified in this work for themselves? For us, we see so much aliveness there and so much potential in our community to be good stewards of energetic literacy that we entrust is going to happen. But it's a big unknown of how it's going to get expressed when we bring in more people to facilitate this work that has been primarily facilitated by Source or people inside of Source for a very long time, our partners that have sat with us for many years. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time to go, okay, now who's ready to expand with us in that way? And who is that person? I think this is probably our biggest unknown yet.
And then the second unknown that I can see is we have decided, it feels a bit edgy, but we have decided to no longer let people just be monthly members in our community, that we are taking a stand for the full annual because, again, it comes back to that idea of being in integrity with the work. And it is important that you give yourself the time required in order to develop a skill and go through the deconditioning process, where what we say is you get the machine out of the body. You got to get the machine out of the body, out of the mind, so that you can really live from that life-affirming, more true to your nature kind of place. It takes time. So that feels a little edgy, that unknown.
That feels really edgy. We're even right now, we are filling our spring cohort, and we wrapped up our winter cohort where we had members kind of continue on into the practice. And the yearly commitment was edgy for them too, because if I don't commit the full year, does that mean that I can't do it right? I'm going to travel for 2 months. This is a big level of a decision, even that I think even transcends the investment at this point, because it is it's a
It's a
big
change.
thing.
You're saying I want to change. I want to grow.
Jump in.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're using words like jump in, but also to preserve the integrity of the container. We have a very curated group of individuals that inside of our practice community that are dedicated to this work in a really real way. And if we have people monthly coming and going, kind of mimicking a subscription, it can feel very destabilizing for our peer groups and for our mini organism that is wanting to grow together. And so at the expense of volume. So if we had, a subscription model, lower cost, lower touch, we get more people, but then it starts to float away and feel big, and we're not doing the work its justice because it does take a bit more commitment. This way, we are less concerned about the volume and more concerned about attracting in the right person that feels ready, that is committed, that will show reciprocity with the community that's growing, so that doesn't feel, I guess, like every other leadership community, like coming in and out and transferring business cards and based on status and C-suite and have to be this container feels very different to people, and having people duck in and out, um, it's not good for anyone's nervous system. Where did they go? And why are they here? And then we have to add additional comms around that, because this work that we're doing is a very communal thing. And so we want people to be able to feel this momentum together so that we can, get it done.
And then the last unknown, which we will probably be living through the duration of the company, is we don't know how big this wants to get. And when we first started, again, we did subscribe a bit more to the tech startup model, which was, really show investors that you can hockey stick and exit within 3 to 5 years. That no longer occurs to us. We are much more interested in how do you create conditions for your creation to grow, and then let it show you how quickly it wants to grow. It's like, looking at a baby and shouting at it to be 15. Like, that isn't living system design. So we are tending like gardeners to this creation. We are creating conditions that are in alignment with energetic literacy, that are in alignment with the logic of life. And we're releasing a bit of that attachment to outcome in terms of how it scales. And I even say that with a question mark, because the truth of the matter is we don't know about the volume at this point.
No.
Of course, I would be lying if I didn't say it isn't a part of my dreamscape that it expands far and wide, but the overall system needs to mature enough to be able to hold that kind of volume. And what kind of timeline is that going to take? And Kristi and I can live very, very happy lives without it being hundreds of thousands of units, projected. And so we are just living a very different, founder experience at this point than when we started, where we are allowing the creation to show us the growth rate rather than us put miracle grow on the whole thing. And it ends up just being void of the very nutrients in which we were endeavoring for it to have.
And I already see early evidence of this, quote unquote, working, from our beta to our summer launch, to our fall launch, to our winter launch that was at full blown capacity with global leaders from all ends of the earth that humbled you and I completely and went, oh my gosh, here's what's going on. Okay, great. So we are living proof that without attaching to those outcomes and those traditional KPIs so much, maybe they happen on their own. Maybe they happen on their own when you're committed to the learnings and the creation itself.
Create the conditions for growth.
Yeah.
Create the conditions for this thing to grow.
And it'll grow.
But forcing it, you got to just really be discerning about when you're forcing a fit and burning fuel, forcing that fit, and when you kind of feel like the wind is at your back with it. And again, there's been some very painful periods where I didn't necessarily feel like the wind was at my back. And that was a certain phase of the process. But I just give different, again, language for the people out there that are also building, that there is a way to do it outside of the traditional tech startup format. And you will be deeply gratified and in fact, maybe even enhanced if you just allow it to not be a hyper megalomaniac growth driven sort of engine. Yeah.
I know. I quite delight in that. My delight comes from when we don't subscribe to that as the rule, that sort of starts to happen on its own. And therefore, for example, for my predictions, is that the moment we stop forcing enterprise and instead we wait for enterprise to come to us to show us their readiness instead of us convincing them, they sit and practice with us for a year. I predict that enterprise is going to come knocking right at our door in a very different way. In fact, it already has in some areas. But then we can go, we have our screening questions and we're not leaning in this convincing moment, but rather they go, I'm ready. I'm taking this to my team. I have the budget, because you do. You're just not putting it in there. There is. You can move it around. And the budget has then lit up for you to take this work into your people and infuse something that is actually going to help fortify the system rather than put a Band-Aid on it. We are now flipping the script to where that will be more of an interview process. And so if you're listening to this and you go, I'll prove it to you. We're ready. I'm outside the box. I'm courageous. Cool. We would like to see that in practice, though, and not in just verbal words.
Yeah, yeah. So that's been the arc, guys, of the last year for Kristi and I as a business. Now let's ground it in a little data and trends, just so that you can also see. This was a volatile year for the most part for Kristi and I. It was bumpy.
Yeah.
Dark spots, light spots, but it was a lot of unknown territory, back into known, back into unknown. This is the nature of nature. So how did your energy trend, Kristi? You take your HRV every day.
Every day.
How has this volatile path? Have you done with it?
So for me, and looking at the end of the year, last year, my baseline was probably about 5 or 10 points lower. Going through the end of the year, going through all of our financial modeling, this realization around where the market is, reformatting with our partners, bringing in our team, and all of these decisions and kind of restructuring our strategies took a load on the system for sure. And you can see that at the end of the year in my data. I will say, though, since the new year has hit, and this is in very large part, it's not because the new year has been easier. It hasn't. But for me, I have been more committed to my own energetic literacy than ever before. I've been holding myself a bit more accountable to the integrity of the work as I build this company and as I traverse motherhood and turning 40 and all these amazing things. There's less friction in my body associated with any of it. And so for me, my baseline and my data has showed this rebound probably for the last 3 months. I've been pretty steady. And that's not because I don't have my recover days. You see them, but then you see my system rebound and you see my system rebound. I've been really committed beyond self-care, because that's always been kind of fine with me. I'm drinking the green smoothies. I'm getting sleep. I sleep 8 hours. It's one of those things. I'm fine. But I've been really committed to the inner work associated with rising to me as a founder and as a mother and as a steward of this work, holding myself accountable to taking it in earnest. And I think it's showing. So for me, it's been kind of the season where I've found my voice more than ever before. And without this work, it wouldn't have been possible. So I'm really grateful for that.
Are you able to place what drove the inspiration to up your commitment?
I noticed.
You kept saying, I've just been more committed. And then I get curious, what was the internal or the external shift that happened that made you want to even go to the next rung?
what comes up right now just organically is I feel this next echelon of me as a mother and as a business owner birthing itself right now. And for me, I I I very much like to be great. So there's a two-part cocktail. The commitment is also coming from my desire for our company to grow to the heights and the places that I know it's ready to. And as a leader, I know where I'm ready to grow. And I know what's required for that. I know what's required for that. And so the commitment on simply me wanting to ensure a peak performance, uh, that I know causes the soul line, the goal line, the inner work, the outer work, me being honest with you, truth telling, all of these things that we practice. So, me taking the practice more into focus is because I'm very also in a season of focus and commitment inside of my family structure and inside of SORCE, because I'm sort of ready to rise to that next layer. And I feel that. And then also, you gotta, I remind myself from time to time that when I'm interfacing with our community, if I am not doing the work, I can feel fraudulent very quickly. And that is a familiar feeling from my past that I don't like. So it hooks me back into my practice really quickly because I have a historical track record of just kind of like, ooh, I can kind of do it this way or justify this or come around the corner, or I'm really good at that. And I don't really subscribe to that behavior anymore. So for me, I felt I can feel that, and I've got to be putting myself through the paces. And it's just the level of commitment right now to the work we're doing, to myself and to my family, just feels kind of at a very high level at the moment.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also subscribe to the belief that SORCE will, even though it is its own separate entity, because you and I are its main stewards, it feels like it. Let me rephrase this. What I wanted to say was it will only grow to the extent that we do. Like if we really want to see our
Kinda true.
creation take root,
Yeah.
like we have to really be willing to submit ourselves every day, to the growth work. But it does exist outside of us, so maybe it's just enhanced now. Maybe it's not reliant, but it's just really enhanced. SORCEs enhance so much when we show up to stay in alignment with our authenticity and with our energy to the best of our ability. And we know
Yes.
that is a never-ending pursuit. Because life just keeps on being born through you until your vessel transitions. And who knows what happens to you after that. Okay, so that was your data.
And your data.
Well, what's your energy status today, too?
Oh, I have a push day. I had a very low recover day yesterday. It's so funny when I use words like low recover, high push. Yeah. I always want to preference and tell people low does not mean bad and high does not mean good. Low means low.
Right. Sure.
I even wish I could have subscribed to that back when I weigh this. Why is that bad? Good. I weigh this. I weigh that versus this. Oh, it would have cleared up so much for me back then.
Yeah.
But I have a very high push day. It's kind of a monumental day. But yesterday I had a 20-point swing from last night to today.
It's a big.
But I had a real big clearing conversation yesterday in my family that wanted to happen. And
nervous system
happened likey, reboundy. Because there's a lot of things that imprint on your nervous system, you guys. Your nervous system doesn't discern whether you ran a mile or had a really hard conversation. It all registers as load. So that was a big relief and release and kind of just a proud moment within the house. And then also my daughter has been sick, but now last night was the first night I kind of got to sleep alone without
Okay.
her on me, which was kind of a little bit sad, but also, yeah, my system loved that. So it just went boop today.
Ding dong, shiny.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Well,
wait,
if
I need
I,
to tell them something. I need to tell them
yeah,
something.
yeah.
I need to tell you something. That
Oh,
you, as in no, not you, as in the
oh,
person.
I'll
This
be
is
over
taking
here.
a long time to set that up. Yeah. Um, Yesterday, we were supposed to record this podcast,
Yeah.
and Jessica saw my recover day. And instead of me going, she was very proactive and said, "Hey, notice your recover day. Do you want to record the pod tomorrow, which is today?" I was like, "Yeah." It was that simple. Sometimes, if you are in an organization where you feel like you can't talk because they're going to say something, try something on like that, a little thing, because sometimes we think we can't enact change at all because we're sitting in fear, but it's contagious. The more that you can. So if you're a leader right now and you notice some of your team is low on energy, reach out and say, "Hey, I notice maybe you're feeling you're not feeling as high energy today. Is there anything I can help you with?" Do that more. You don't even need Source to do that. Do that more, because what did that do for me when she reached out? It showed me that she cared. It showed me that she's listening. It showed me that she is attuned. And it also showed practicality. She's not becoming over responsible for my life and asking 1,000 questions, and we're not emotionally vomiting on each other. It's none of that. It was very quick and practical use of energy and time. So kudos.
And Kristi does that for me all the time as well. It's something that really helps. Again, the deconditioning process of I have to perform strength. It's like, no, we know everybody is really strong. Everybody's capacity is really, really overall pretty high. Everybody knows how to endure a lot of load. But do we know how to time our efforts with more precision? Can we trust in this basic physiological principle that when you give yourself the space, that you will be back to baseline faster? Like, these are things that we really do put to practice, and it really helps.
Yeah.
It really helps. Thanks for that. And okay, so for me, data, I have a maintain day today. It was a lower maintain. It is the first day of my cycle, and it was the full moon lunar eclipse last night. So, but it's been a full day, and I've just been, yeah, feeling pretty grounded inside myself, not like I'm projecting too much energy outside. I'm kind of sticking with, and it feels just fine.
Hmm.
Um, Overall, when I look at my data over the last year that had a ton of volatility, because again, it wasn't just the business stuff. Kristi went through a move that I
Hmm.
had to metabolize, and then and then because she was no longer there, that
Yeah.
actually opened up my world, and I moved. So Kristi's now in Boise. I am now in Lake Arrowhead. We both no longer live just, a couple miles from each other. That part we don't like, but what we do like
No.
are the trees. And I am seeing in my baseline
This
I
is
have
so true.
definitely since I moved, my baseline has risen. And it's just because there's less stimulation. I hear bird noises way more often than I hear cars. And for my nervous system health, I think it's helpful. I was really worried that the lack of social circles was going to leave my nervous system feeling lonely, but I've met people, and I've also discovered at this chapter of my life, I really do enjoy more quiet time and space than in previous iterations of myself. So overall, even with the volatility, as soon as I got to Lake Arrowhead in the trees, baseline started to go, "Root," and it's held, I would say, probably about, I don't know, let's call it 6, 7, 8 points higher than
Mm.
when I was in Marina del Rey, Venice. And that's just interesting. For anybody that's looking for systemic relief, notice the environment you're in and notice what makes your nervous system, feel a little bit more regulated. These are things that maybe, you can do for yourself. A little move
Mm-hmm.
might go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just seen that. I also gave myself full permission because I was away in the trees to go full wintering. And usually during December and the holidays, I have a big collapse. I did not this year. I have been having a yearning within my being during the winter, to go into a cabin and get a little bit more quiet. I gifted myself that this year, and it proved out in data. There wasn't a drop this December. I didn't have the emotional upset that I normally do. In previous episodes, if you go back to last year, I talked about the sadness that comes over me
Mm-hmm.
most years. It wasn't as present this year. So it's just these things like the yearnings, the intuitive yearnings. It's like, can you roll the dice on some of those to see if they check out? Because it might not just be an ideal that lives in your mind. It might be a knowing that you're being called toward. So anyway,
Totally.
my data, even with all the volatility, is in better shape now than it was even during, the more known phases. I can traverse the unknown in a pretty regulated state. And for that, I'm
Mm.
grateful.
That's awesome. That's also
Yeah.
really cool to just point back to environment being such a big key for many people. And I can only imagine if you're, sitting in an office under the fluorescent light with a team member or a boss that's just around you all the time. It's like this environment that we're in, which is why this work that we're doing is so systemic, so that we can start to alleviate some of these environments for you guys and provide a better, uh, more snuggly place to be. And how what you just said is, and how that actually improves performance,
Mm-hmm.
and improves, those metrics that people are tied to. It's just the how is very different.
So let's round out this beautiful episode and exploration with a commitment. Because when it comes to energetic literacy, we know that if we don't intend to make a different action, chances are we won't. So, what kind of commitment is going to continue your growth, Kristi, that you can sense into at this time?
For me, it's going to it's almost funny because it's to stay committed. My
Yeah.
commitment is to stay committed
Yeah.
because I I can easily subscribe to like on off on off. I've said that before, and I want to feel a steadiness in myself and in my being, and I want to remain commitment focused, and being okay with that looking very different this next 3 months than that 3 months. So it's a little bit nuanced, but I almost need to experiment myself with commitment to know that just because this next 3 months may look different than the last doesn't mean that I'm any less committed. And so I want to keep kind of my commitment to my family, myself, my work in an earnest checks and balances, so that I can go through this next quarter with feeling what commitment feels like in different, areas of my life. So I'm going to remain committed to practicing with our community.
Hmm. I don't want to name this, but
Mhm.
I think that I have to.
This can be the
um,
super tease.
yeah. For me, I feel like the commitment is going to remain around the financial health of the business, and to not avert my eyes from that piece. Not in a way that's like hyper vigilant, but in a way that is just taking a stand for the worth that we are creating. Knowing that, listen, I don't feel there are certain practical things, of course, that I have on my plate to financially pay for, but the payment for me truly is in being in the work and being in the community. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that life costs money, I wouldn't want to hoard that at all. I want to create a company that is creating value in the full scope of that definition. And what I've been loose on is the financial piece, because I've been so focused on how we create value and integrity with the work, but the business can't exist without the money. So the commitment remains that I'm going to be focused on the financial health of the business, because without that piece, we don't have a future as a business. And I really want this business to be a part of the case study of businesses that can get it done in a regenerative way. So financial health is what remains my commitment.
Spoken like a CEO.
Well, whatever that is.
Chief
all right, you
Energy
guys.
Officer.
That's so. Thank you guys for joining this edition of the Practice Podcast, Founder to Founder. I hope that this conversation just inspires you to do it different, do it in a way that feels true to both your bottom line and to your spirit. Make it a twofer. If you're going to do it, make it a twofer. Yeah? Kristi, any final words before we go?
Yeah, just thanks for listening. Thanks for being along for the ride. And thanks to our practice community that's growing, that we're listening to, that's informing this, that we see you. We talk about you guys all the time. We're committed to our community. We're very committed to our community. So thank you guys for being in and traversing all of the terrain with us, because it's very much a co-creation. We appreciate every single one of you that is inside of our practice community.
All right, guys. Until next time, take good care.
Bye-bye.